They voted me out of my own company between the second and third cup of stale conference coffee. No shouting, no protest, just a scripted, effective immediately from the board's lawyer and a few averted gazes from the same people who once handed me birthday cards and handshakes at barbecues. My wife, board member wife, sat perfectly still, didn't speak, didn't even glance at me. Her fingers rested gently on the edge of the polished oak table like she was waiting for a pedicure, not ending my career. They called it a strategic realignment. Said they needed a CEO who was more digitally fluent. I built this company from a grease-stained garage to 4 factories and national distribution. And I did it while she posted motivational quotes on LinkedIn and pretended to understand margin strategy. My brother-in-law Rick leaned back like he'd just passed a golf hole under par. Joel, her cousin, winked at me when the vote passed unanimous. I nodded, smiled even, because I'd already packed the parachute they didn't know they'd be needing. Security escorted me to the elevator. Clipboard guy wouldn't meet my eye. I gave him a full smile, the kind that makes people uneasy, because it means you're already thinking 3 moves ahead. Let me pause for just a moment. If you're listening without subscribing, now's the time. Stories like this aren't for everyone. But if you've ever felt the cold steel of betrayal in your spine, this one's for you. Back in the parking lot, my badge no longer worked. My car still had a visitor tag, hanging like an obituary from the rearview mirror. A woman who once called me sir walked past me and didn't blink. I had become a ghost in a building I once designed brick by brick. But I didn't rage, didn't call my lawyer. I just drove home in silence, past billboards with my company's name on them, past the warehouse I personally wired in 2007. No music, no calls, just the sound of a man breathing through something dangerous. When I got home, the garage light was on. Funny, no one ever turned that thing off. I stepped inside and there it was, still damp-smelling and sacred. My original workshop, pegboard tools, a cracked folding table where I once bled from a torque wrench and called it Progress. I knelt beside the dusty file cabinet. Not the obvious one, the other one, the one with the false bottom. I reached in and pulled out a flash drive. Fail-safe protocol. I plugged it into my old air-gapped laptop. Fan groaning like a lifelong smoker. A folder popped open. 12 subfolders. 1 video. I hit play. There I was, 2 years younger, eyes clearer, voice steadier. If you're watching this, I said to myself, they did it. Good. That means we're ready. I smiled the same way I did when Rick smirked during the board vote. They thought they took the wheel. They didn't notice I cut the brakes months ago. The bourbon tasted like dust. I didn't even like bourbon. I just kept the bottle around, gifted to me after our first million in sales. Save it for when you've made it, the supplier said. I guess tonight qualified. Or maybe it was the opposite. I stared at the shelf above the workbench, still littered with old screws and receipts from hardware stores that don't exist anymore. Then I saw it, taped beneath the top plank, barely holding together. A yellowing envelope, labeled in my handwriting. In case of treason. I opened it like it might explode. Inside was a password, one I'd intentionally made long, ugly, and impossible to memorize. And yet, I remembered it. I booted up the offline laptop, the one with no network card, the one I built just for this moment. It whined to life, slower than memory, but it opened the folder marked Failsafe Protocol. 12 subfolders. Codenames. Contracts. Hidden voting structures. Legal traps disguised as boilerplate. One folder stood out, deadless. Inside were LLC registrations in Delaware, Wyoming, even one in Cyprus. Shells within shells. Clauses I'd planted in voting documents over years, giving me control without visibility. I had diluted my name on paper, let them raise their percentages and titles, but under the surface, I still held 48.6% through a trust none of them had bothered to read. Cascade Equities, administered by someone who owed me a life. They thought they'd exiled me, but exile only works if the king has no throne left. I clicked another folder. Hidden recordings. Board meetings. Rick joking about layoffs while sipping sparkling water. Joel saying we needed a more photogenic face in leadership. My wife. She said nothing in any of them. But silence is a vote, too. I opened the shareholder registry. Cross-referenced it with control rights. Ran the script. One line blinked in green. Cascade Equities, 48.6%, trust activation eligible. I leaned back in the creaking chair and whispered, they never looked under the hood. And that was when I made the call. Not to a lawyer, not to a friend, to Malcolm Glass. He was the founder of Crooked River Capital, a hedge fund with more lawyers than compassion. 7 years ago, he tried to buy us out. I told him to go to hell. Tonight, I emailed him from an encrypted account I hadn't touched in a decade. Subject line: interested in finishing what you started? He replied in 7 minutes. Call me. The call happened at 12:41 a.m. I was barefoot in the garage, staring at a spreadsheet open on my laptop and holding a burner phone to my ear. Malcolm didn't waste time. You're serious? He asked. I don't bluff. I remember. So why now? Because they think they won. He went quiet. I pictured him leaning back in some glass tower office, smiling that predatory smile hedge funders save for hostile takeovers and bankrupt relatives. I want all 48.6% in your hands, I said. But this happens fast. Overnight. No leaks. No headlines. Full NDA. This will cost you everything, Malcolm warned. Your name. Your story. Your reputation. They buried that already, I said. Another pause. Then, show me the trigger clauses. Show me the keys. You'll have them in 3 hours, I replied. Board wakes up owning nothing but their stationery. He exhaled, slow, like a wolf catching scent. You're not giving me the company. You're loading the gun and handing it to me. No, I said. I'm handing it to the one person they fear more than me. We ended the call with no pleasantries. Just strategy. I got to work. Every override code. Every redirect. Every ownership clause buried in footnotes. It was all there, mapped, encrypted, and ready to fire. By 3:20 a.m., I was on the 23rd floor of a midnight law office downtown. Frosted glass. One lamp glowing. No nameplates. 3 men sat inside. One lawyer. One notary. One from Crooked River. Name was Tobias. Didn't shake hands. I liked him already. Trigger letters? He asked. I slid a USB across the table. All embedded. Control docs. Voting overrides. Escrowed blackmail in case they challenge. Tobias raised an eyebrow. You planned this for a while. 3 years, I said. Long enough to let them build a narrative. Now I burn it. We signed. 1 page at a time. I handed over what they thought they stole from me. And when the notary stamped the last signature, Tobias said one thing. At 9 a.m., they'll find out who really owns their empire. I left the building. Drove home in silence. Pulled into my garage as the first light crept across the street. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, listening to the hum of a house that still believed it had secrets left to keep. At 8:57 a.m., the company systems froze. Joel was the first to notice. He tried to log into the investor dashboard from his Tesla, no doubt to prep for his Monday morning call with that podcast he kept bribing to call him a visionary. The screen flickered. Then this message appeared in blinking blue text. Access denied. Administrative override. DRK NXT Holdings. He thought it was a glitch. By 9:02 a.m., Rick's assistant sent her third frantic email to IT. She couldn't access payroll, or the CRM, or even her Outlook. All she got was a firewall redirect. User removed from access group. Rick assumed it was sabotage. Maybe a Russian hack. Maybe China. He was always one to blame someone big when it was someone near. My wife, Elena, checked the board channel on Slack at 9:06 a.m. Nothing. Then she opened her email and saw the memo. From Malcolm Glass. Subject: change in ownership structure. Immediate. CC: legal, compliance, HR, board distribution list. Effective 9 a.m., Cascade Equities has executed full transfer of controlling interests to DRK NXT Holdings, a Crooked River Capital subsidiary. All board functions are suspended pending reevaluation. A special shareholder meeting is scheduled for 11 a.m. to discuss restructuring. Attendance mandatory. Questions should be directed to Tobias Kane, special counsel. Just reading his name must have felt like swallowing broken glass. I pictured Elena blinking at the screen, trying to reread the lines as if they'd change. Then, inevitably, she did what all cowards do. She called someone else. Rick. He didn't answer. He was already storming through the parking garage, barking into a dead Bluetooth headset, unaware his badge had been deactivated. Joel tried calling Tobias directly. Got voicemail. Please leave a message. The receptionist at Crooked River said he was in session. Translation: we own you now. Sit down. I made coffee at home. Black. No sugar. No creamer. just bitter enough to suit the morning. By 10:12 a.m., the phones at the office stopped ringing. The receptionist was let go, along with the entire PR team. Contracts were being reviewed in real time by Malcolm's men. Every loyalty clause, every ethics clause, every off-the-books hire they made. And there were a lot. I had buried them in approvals for years. Each one stamped with smiles and rubber signatures. Each one quietly recorded. At 10:45 a.m., Elena called me. Not a word exchanged between us in 36 hours. "Hi," she said softly. No apology. Just air. The kind you blow into a dying balloon. I didn't respond. "I assume you've seen what's happening," she added. I stirred my coffee. "Are you going to tell me what this is?" She tried again. I waited 5 seconds, then said, "It's what you voted for." Silence. "Why?" she whispered, voice cracking. "Why would you burn everything we built?" I smiled faintly. "We?" She paused again. "You blindsided us." "No," I said. "I watched you come for me. I just stepped aside. You didn't realize the cliff was behind me." More silence. She wasn't good at those. "You had a plan all along," she said finally. Accusingly. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "People like you always mistake silence for surrender," I said. But I wasn't gone, Elena. I was patient. She sniffed. I could tell she was near tears. She probably wanted me to throw her a line, a chance to climb back in. But I'd already rewired the house. The locks were digital now. The 11 a.m. meeting took place over Zoom. Tobias chaired it. All board members required to attend. Malcolm didn't show. He didn't need to. His voice arrived in a pre-recorded message. "To the former board, your tenure has concluded. You gambled. You lost. But don't worry, we won't sue. You're not worth the filing fees." I watched Joel's face as he read the fine print. His smile collapsed in real time. Rick was visibly sweating. Even his polo couldn't hide the panic. Elena just sat there, eyes blank, hands folded, like she did during the vote. No one noticed the quiet slipstream of contracts being nullified, employment agreements revoked, stock options frozen, pensions under review. Then came the cherry. At 11:37 a.m., each of them received a final email. Subject: termination of board entitlements, effective immediately. No access, no equity, no voting rights. Their names were erased from the architecture they helped build, poorly, arrogantly, greedily. And as for me, I didn't rejoin. That would have been too clean. I let Malcolm keep it. I didn't want the company anymore. I just wanted the silence that followed the fall. And I wanted one more thing. At 3:12 p.m., Elena arrived home. She entered the house carefully, shoes off, purse limp on her arm. The woman who once carried herself like she owned the room now moved like a guest. I sat at the dining table, sipping the last of the morning's coffee. She approached, hands shaking. "Why?" she said again. I stood, walked past her, handed her a manila envelope. Inside, screenshots, emails, hotel receipts, a photo of her and Rick. Not in a room, but entering one. She stared at the envelope like it might burn her hands. I leaned close, calm, clear, deliberate. "You didn't just betray a partner," I said. "You underestimated a strategist." And then I walked out. No screaming, no drama, just silence. And behind me, the sound of a woman realizing the game ended 3 moves ago. The day after the lockout, I bought flowers. Not for her. For optics. A modest arrangement. White orchids in a slate gray vase. Understated. Elegant. The kind of gesture that said, "I still have grace," even after torching their futures. I dropped them off at the reception desk of Hartwell and Rowe, the PR firm Elena had bragged about hiring last year. "Brand image is everything," she'd said. Now that image was collapsing like a star too arrogant to cool down. The attached card read, "To Elena Callahan, thank you for your service. May your next endeavor be equally enlightening." The founding partner. They knew who I was. The receptionist didn't say a word, just nodded, like she'd been briefed on which names not to speak too loudly. I walked out without turning around. Across town, my lawyer, Stephen Rowe, was finishing what I'd commissioned 3 weeks ago, before the vote, before the flash drive, before the betrayal was official. A press release. Not a retaliation. Not a scandal bomb. Just an obituary. For Elena's career. I reviewed it once more on my phone outside the building. Each line was measured. Professional. Legally reviewed and bulletproof. For immediate release. DRK NXT Holdings announces full acquisition of Next Horizon Inc. Effective August 19th, 9 a.m., all executive board positions have been terminated. The company is transitioning toward a streamlined leadership model prioritizing integrity, transparency, and operational discipline, said Tobias Kane, special counsel to DRK NXT Holdings. Public speculation has emerged surrounding internal misconduct and breaches of fiduciary responsibility by former leadership. While no criminal charges are pending at this time, an internal ethics review is underway. DRK NXT has no further comment. No names were mentioned, but the right people would read between the lines. The media didn't take long. By 4 p.m., Business Ledger reposted the statement under the headline, "Founder ousted, then strikes back. New power player in town." They used a photo of me from 5 years ago. Tired eyes, cracked smile, tie crooked. I liked it. It made me look like someone who'd seen war and won it quietly. The Real kicker came from Morning Market Wire, a smaller but well-respected blog run by a former compliance lawyer. They didn't mince words. Sources confirmed that cascading proxy rights were triggered days before the boardroom ousting of Next Horizon's founder, effectively nullifying the vote before it was even cast. If verified, this maneuver would not only reverse the ousting, but expose the board to legal scrutiny for breach of fiduciary duty, especially if interpersonal conflicts were involved. Especially, they didn't know how involved Rick and Elena were. But that seed was planted. And seeds, as I'd learned, grow best in silence. At 5:19 p.m., I got a text from Joel. "This is getting out of hand. Let's talk." I didn't reply. At 6:02 p.m., Rick called 3 times. I let them ring out like distant alarms in a house I no longer lived in. At 6:17 p.m., Elena texted, "Please, you've made your point. What do you want?" That was the wrong question, because this wasn't about want. It was about architecture. At 7 p.m., the story hit LinkedIn Pulse. It always starts there, where fragile egos go to burn publicly. The post was from someone inside the industry, not even someone close to us, seeing yet another board implode because of ego and underestimation of the founder. When you replace vision with vanity, don't be surprised when the foundation fights back. 800 likes in 2 hours. At 9 p.m., I received an email from Westcliff Private Academy. Elena was listed as an emergency contact on their board of trustees. Subject line, "Board position status review, confidential." I smiled. When ethics move, they ripple. When legacy falls, it stains everything it ever touched. She had her name on too many things. I was slowly removing mine from all of them. By 10:15 p.m., Elena called again. I let her leave a voicemail. Her voice was dry, desperate. "I know you think this is justice, but you're unraveling more than just the company. You're unraveling me. Was that the plan? You were going to kill me in stages." A pause. "You know what hurts the most? I still don't know when you started planning all this." She didn't. That's the beauty of betrayal. The moment you plan for it is the moment you become immune to it. I stood in the garage again. Same place. Same creaking beam above the workbench. Except this time, the box wasn't hidden. It was open. Inside, I had the envelope with the printed press release, the list of revoked access codes, a USB with every transaction, and a final letter written months ago to the board of Next Horizon. "You mistook compliance for weakness. You mistook silence for surrender. You mistook a partner for a pawn. Enjoy the view on your way down." I sealed it, labeled the box, "Final Drafts," and went back upstairs to sleep. I didn't dream. When everything goes to plan, you don't need dreams. Just deadlines. It started with the sound of a door not unlocking. Tuesday morning. Elena had been staying at the lake house, her version of damage control disguised as a wellness break. She returned quietly, thinking she'd slip in, smooth things over, maybe bake banana bread, and post a filtered photo of morning sunlight on the counter. She stepped onto the porch at 7:42 a.m., her phone in one hand, designer tote in the other. She inserted the key. Nothing. She jiggled it again. Still nothing. Then she noticed the lock had been replaced. Matte black. New brand. No logo. Digital keypad where the deadbolt used to be. Her phone buzzed. One message. New code unavailable. Access revoked. Documents pending. S. No name. Just an initial. She knocked once. Then again, harder. I stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, watching her through the side window. She looked small. Shrinking. The same woman who once managed investor luncheons in silk blouses now wore panic like a second skin. She knocked again. Louder. Scott, are you serious? I didn't answer. I just walked to the table and clicked play on my laptop. The external speakers hummed to life. The audio played through the open window. If you're listening to this, you've reached the deletion phase. You're probably standing outside, wondering how we got here. So let me help. You built a story around yourself. I built a contingency around that story. She froze. The voice was mine, recorded weeks ago, before the vote had even been discussed. I had predicted this, her denial, her arrogance, her belief that I wouldn't dare act. This home? I paid every installment. You added paint and pillows. This name? I carried it while you traded it for proximity. These titles? You polished them while I encrypted the floor beneath them. I watched her eyes twitch toward the Ring camera. She knew then. This wasn't a fight. It was a display. I walked to the door, opened it halfway. She looked up at me, face tight, holding back fury under the veil of confusion. You changed the locks? No, I said. I changed the system. You can't lock me out of my own house. I didn't, I said calmly. You locked yourself out when you signed the clause in the prenuptial agreement. Section 7.3, Abandonment and Fiduciary Breach. She blinked. I handed her a folder, thick. Legal stock. My attorney's name embossed on the bottom corner. Inside is the notarized affidavit of infidelity. Attached are asset tracing reports, hotel receipts, and call logs. It's already been filed. You have 10 days to vacate the property. You're bluffing, she whispered. No, I'm executing. She stepped back like the folder had bitten her. Her voice dropped an octave. Scott, we don't have to do this. You're hurt. I understand. But what we built, what we had, it matters. I studied her for a long moment. Then I spoke slowly. What matters, Elena, is that you thought betrayal had no invoice. You spent years investing in appearances. I spent them investing in evidence. She dropped the folder. It landed like a warning shot. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my jurisdiction anymore. She stood in silence, eyes glinting with the realization that the version of me she married was dead, and the version standing here didn't flinch. Rick didn't mean anything, she said suddenly, like the words might land softer in the air. I raised an eyebrow. You coordinated my ousting with a man who once borrowed my car and returned it with a parking ticket in my name. Don't pretend it was meaningless. It was meticulous. Elena's shoulders sagged. You'll ruin me. No, I said. You did that yourself. I'm just letting the world see. I closed the door. Let the latch click. And behind it, the sound of someone realizing the difference between discomfort and destruction. By 9 a.m., the mailroom at her firm received a package. Unmarked. Inside, a flash drive. A notarized resignation template. A sticky note. Suggest you use it before compliance does. I'd traced 3 internal emails linking her name to Rick's backdated campaign consulting expenses, charged to the company under strategic growth. A quiet fraud, easily missed, until someone highlights it. At 11:14 a.m., she resigned for personal reasons. At 11:47 a.m., her corporate access badge stopped working. By noon, Rick posted a cryptic story on Instagram. Something about snakes in the family tree. I smiled. Let him flail. I had no interest in him. He was a side effect, not a rival. That evening, I sat in the den. Lights low, music off. Just the ambient hum of the air conditioner and the slow drip of rain against the window. I opened the final drafts box again. Removed the last item inside. A photo. Not of her. Of me. Me, 15 years ago. Holding a soldering iron in the same garage. Before the logos. Before the suits. Before I made the mistake of thinking partnership required romance. I slipped it into a frame. Placed it on the mantel. Then I poured a glass of wine. And sat with the quiet. No applause. No headlines. Just consequence. Thursday morning. Elena was no longer at the lake house. She was in a hotel, cheap, downtown, the kind of place executives only visit when their credit cards start bouncing. I knew this because I had eyes everywhere. A friend of hers, Madison, called me, by mistake. Her name popped up on my caller ID, and curiosity got the better of me. Elena, she said quickly. No, I replied. But I imagine you were about to say something important. There was a pause. Then a sigh. I'm sorry. She's spiraling. What did you do? I didn't answer. I let silence play bodyguard. She says you're trying to destroy her. that you've poisoned everyone. Even her parents are asking questions. Did you call to ask if it's true? No, Madison said quietly. I called because I think it is. And she's lying to everyone. Click. I didn't call back. Didn't need to. By the weekend, the whispers had started. Her name disappeared from gala invites. Clients quietly dropped her from boards. Even her Pilates instructor posted a cryptic Instagram story about betrayal and unpaid invoices. Meanwhile, I hosted a dinner. Just 6 people, all former allies of Elena's, all of whom had received updated copies of key documents. None of whom had known about the second mortgage she took out without telling them, secured with false projections and forged signatures. They smiled at dinner, ate well, but by dessert, none of them would ever vouch for her again. I waited until the first of the month. That's when everything renews. Credit cards, subscriptions, mortgage payments. And that's when I revoked every linked account she had access to. First, the Amex declined at a boutique. Then, her Uber app locked out. By noon, her iCloud account sent a security alert. She texted me, Elena, my accounts aren't working. Did you change the info? Me, no. I just reclaimed what was already mine. Elena, I need to pay my assistant. Me, she quit yesterday. She tried calling. I let it ring. She tried calling again. I turned off the phone. By 4 p.m., she was spotted at a credit union asking about temporary lines of credit. They turned her away. Her debt-to-income ratio was poisoned by her own signatures. I'd simply shared the truth with the right underwriter. She tried moving funds from her brokerage account. Found it emptied. The trust we once shared? Dissolved. The car lease? Returned. Even the gym fob failed to blink green. She was watching her life evaporate one ping at a time. And I went to the dentist. My cleaning was overdue. Her lawyer sent me a letter. Thin, panicked, desperate. They accused me of sabotage. I replied with a file marked disclosure timeline. It showed every date, every action, every permission. Her own digital signature on the documents. Time-stamped. My lawyer sent one line. We are not responsible for the consequences of her choices. She filed an emergency motion to freeze shared assets. It was denied in under 2 hours. I had already pre-divided everything 6 months earlier. Every account that bore her name was jointly held. But every one I kept? Independent. Protected. Irrevocable. She stood in front of the court and begged for mercy. The judge asked, "Were you aware of the arrangement when you signed these?" She nodded, eyes wet. "Then I suggest you begin with accountability." That's when her last safety net snapped. Her parents, once her emergency backup, sent her a message, "We're sorry, but we can't fix this one." And I booked a vacation. Nothing fancy, just a cabin. Mountains. Peace. She showed up one last time. Raincoat. No umbrella. Wet hair. No makeup. She knocked gently. I opened the door halfway. She didn't speak right away. Finally, she asked, "Why didn't you scream at me? Why didn't you curse me out? Fight back?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Because that's not how you punish betrayal." Her eyes welled. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No, I don't waste energy on expired things." She blinked. I stepped back, not to invite her in, just to give her space to walk away. She didn't. "Was there ever a chance we could have fixed it?" "No," I said softly. "Because fixing requires truth. And you replaced it with strategy." She nodded. "Just once." I watched her walk down the steps slowly. No tantrum, no drama, just the slow realization that some endings don't echo. They whisper. She reached her car, fumbled the door, then stopped, turned back one last time. "You really were always one step ahead." I didn't answer. I closed the door and locked it.